The incident took place in a quiet mountain village. In May 1938, a young man took the lives of 30 people in a single night. Why did he stain his hometown with blood? One of the most horrifying mass murders in the nation's history. The Tsuyama Massacre. We want you to know it. The man grew up in a small village, nestled in the mountains of Tsuyama, Okayama Prefecture. He lived with his father, mother, and younger sister, and was said to be a quiet and polite boy. He excelled in his studies and was respected by those around him. He especially loved history and military affairs, and reportedly dreamed of one day becoming a soldier. But his life took a tragic turn. Around the age of 20, he was diagnosed with tuberculosis and failed the military draft examination. With his dream of joining the army crushed and his health deteriorating, his distance from others in the village only grew. Even his relationship with his family began to show signs of strain. His loneliness deepened. What hurt him most was the talk surrounding a relationship with a woman. He had believed they were engaged, but she suddenly became distant. Later, he learned that villagers had spread the rumor that his illness made him unfit for marriage. He began to feel that the village saw him as stigmatized. Gradually, he isolated himself and harbored thoughts of revenge. In the months leading up to the attack, his diary and will reportedly contained chilling phrases like, "I will end this village." And so, meticulously and methodically, he prepared for the tragedy to come. On May 21, 1938, at 23 years old, he quietly left his home just after midnight, armed with a hunting rifle, a Japanese sword, and an axe. He moved with chilling calm, as if following a script. He first climbed a utility pole and cut the power lines, plunging the entire village into darkness and cutting off any means of communication or escape. Around 1 a.m., he made his way to a house on the village's western edge, home to a farming family. All the lights were out. The house was silent. He quietly opened the door and stepped inside, making his way to the sleeping family, raising his gun. The first shot pierced the darkness. The victims, roused from sleep but still confused, were shot one after another. A mother fell while holding her child. A father, trying to rise to his feet, was also killed. No one in that household survived. For the next 2.5 hours, he moved from home to home, over 10 in total, breaking through doors and mercilessly shooting and slashing the sleeping residents. In some houses, entire families were wiped out. Those who awoke and tried to hide found no escape from the small, dark rooms. The last house he visited belonged to the woman he had once been involved with. He set it ablaze, walking away as flames consumed it. At around 3:30 a.m., he arrived at a relative's shed on the outskirts of the village, where he drank poison and took his own life. In just a few hours before dawn, 30 lives were lost, and the village was left in blood-soaked silence. The following morning, a villager discovered the horror and notified the police. The officers who arrived at the scene were stunned into silence. Blood stained the floors of the homes, where bodies lay still. Survivors, stunned and silent, stared blankly into the sky. News of the massacre spread rapidly across the country through newspapers and radio. It was described as an unprecedented mass murder and a bizarre act of vengeance, but many reports leaned toward the sensational, labeling the man a demon or monster. Meanwhile, rumors circulating in the village began to spiral out of control. He was jilted because of his illness. He was obsessed with women. He had a dark past. Truth and exaggeration blurred, as the man's image was distorted into something inhuman. Few voices called attention to the closed nature of the village, or the discrimination that had contributed to his isolation. Even after the full story came to light, questions remained. The incident eventually became the subject of books and films, a tale of terror and intrigue that continued to fascinate and horrify. What happened that night was one of the deadliest crimes committed by a single person in Japan's history, but it cannot be explained by personal madness alone. The setting was a rural village, where exclusion and gossip were a way of life. At the time, tuberculosis was considered incurable and shameful. Those afflicted often had their engagements broken off. Failing the military draft carried another stigma. To be unable to serve meant being labeled as worthless, a burden. Some scholars suggest that the rigid social structure and military pressure of the era robbed people like him of their dignity and identity. Alone, with no one to confide in, he wrote repeatedly in his diary, "I can't trust anyone. I want to die." This was a horrifying crime, yes, but beneath it lay the deep cracks of a society that abandoned those who suffer in silence. Even in today's world, there may be people around us who are silently breaking down, unnoticed. And if left unchecked, such tragedies could one day repeat. 30 lives were lost in a single night. This was a tragedy born from isolation and despair. If even one person had listened to his voice, this ending might have been different. The Tsuyama Massacre. How will you remember this event?